The red lights flashed across the bridge of the USS Defiance as Captain Jake Morrison stared at the main display screen. The numbers did not lie, but he wished they did. 300 alien ships had just appeared at the edge of the solar system, and every single one of them was heading straight for Earth. Commander Lisa Barnes stood at her station, her fingers moving quickly over the tactical controls. She had seen many battles in her 10 years of service, but nothing like this. The enemy fleet was massive, larger than anything humanity had ever faced before. Each ship was the size of a small city, armed with weapons that could turn planets into dust. "Captain, I am reading 312 vessels," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "They are moving in perfect formation. Estimated arrival at Earth orbit in 6 hours and 20 minutes. Jake Morrison had been commanding the Defiance for 3 years. He was 42 years old, a veteran of the border wars with the Centauri pirates. He had always found a way to win, even when the odds were against him. But this was different. This was impossible. The Zephyrian Empire had been expanding across the galaxy for over a century. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire species. Their ships were faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything humans could build. Until now, Earth had been too far away for them to notice. That time was over. "Where are our fleets?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Lieutenant Peter Hayes turned from his communications console. He was young, only 25, but he was the best communications officer in the fleet. "Admiral Carter's fleet is fighting the Zephyrians at Alpha Centauri. Admiral Thompson is defending the colonies at Wolf 359. Admiral Rodriguez is protecting the mining stations near Vega. All other ships are scattered across human space." Jake nodded grimly. The Zephyrians were smart. They had attacked everywhere at once, spreading human forces thin. Now Earth stood almost defenseless, with only a handful of orbital platforms and patrol ships to protect it. The Defiance was the most powerful ship in the system, but it was still just one ship against an armada. Dr. Aaron Cole walked onto the bridge carrying a datapad in his hands. He was the ship's chief scientist, a brilliant man who had designed many of the Defiance's advanced systems. His usually calm face showed worry as he approached the captain. "Captain, I need to speak with you privately," Aaron said. "It's about our mission to the Kepler system." Jake followed Aaron to a quiet corner of the bridge. The Defiance had just returned from a reconnaissance mission to study an ancient alien artifact. It had been routine work, or so they thought. "The quantum core," Aaron whispered. "During our scans of the artifact, something happened. The core absorbed some kind of energy signature. I've been running tests for the past week, and I think I know what it does." "What are you talking about?" Jake asked. Aaron showed him the datapad. The screen displayed complex equations and energy readings that made little sense to Jake. "The quantum core isn't just a faster-than-light drive anymore. The alien energy has changed it. If we modify the field matrix, we can create temporal echoes of the ship." Jake stared at him. "Temporal echoes?" "Copies," Aaron explained. "Not real ships, but echoes in space-time that would appear real to enemy sensors. We could make it look like there are dozens of ships instead of just one." The idea was incredible, but Jake had learned to trust Aaron's scientific mind. The man had never been wrong about the theoretical possibilities of their technology. But there was always a difference between theory and practice. "How many echoes?" Jake asked. "I calculate we could create 20 to 30 stable echoes for about 20 minutes, Aaron said. "After that, the quantum core would overload and destroy the ship." Jake looked back at the main screen where the enemy fleet continued its steady approach toward Earth. 300 ships against one. Even with temporal echoes, the odds were still impossible. But impossible was better than hopeless. Chief Engineer Maya Rodriguez appeared at Jake's side. She was a small woman with strong hands and an even stronger will. She had kept the Defiance running through battles that should have destroyed it. If anyone could modify the quantum core, it was her. "I heard what the doctor said," Maya spoke quietly. "I've been thinking about it since he mentioned the possibility last week. It's crazy, but it might work." "How long would you need?" Jake asked. Maya looked at her watch. 5 hours, maybe 6. We would have to shut down life support on decks 7 through 12. We would need to reroute power from the artificial gravity generators, and we would have to bypass every safety protocol in the system. "What's the risk?" Jake wanted to know. "If something goes wrong during the modification, the quantum explosion would vaporize us instantly," Maya said. "If something goes wrong during the battle, same result. If everything goes perfectly, we still have only a 20% chance of surviving the core overload. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had followed him through impossible situations before. They trusted him to find a way to win when winning seemed impossible. Now he was asking them to risk everything on a plan that would probably kill them all. But if they did nothing, Earth would fall. Billions of people would die or become slaves. Humanity would be finished as a free species. The choice was simple, even if it was also terrible. "Do it," Jake said. Maya nodded and headed for the engineering section. Aaron followed her, already working on the calculations they would need. Jake returned to his captain's chair and activated the ship's internal communication system. "This is Captain Morrison speaking to all crew," he said. "In 6 hours, the largest enemy fleet in history will reach Earth. Our homeworld has no other protection. We are going to attempt something that has never been tried before. It is dangerous and our chances of survival are small. But if we succeed, we might just save every human life in the galaxy." He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew. They were scared, but they were ready. That was what made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. When things looked hopeless, they found hope anyway. "Prepare for battle stations," Jake announced. "Today we find out what one human ship can do against impossible odds." Maya Rodriguez stood in the heart of the engineering section, surrounded by the humming machinery that kept the USS Defiance alive. The quantum core rose before her like a metal tower, pulsing with blue energy that seemed almost alive. She had worked with this technology for years, but what she was about to do had never been attempted by any human engineer. Her team gathered around her with tools and data pads, waiting for orders. Engineer Bill Carter, a veteran who had served on ships for 20 years, looked nervous as he studied the modification plans. Engineer Nancy Phillips, young and eager, seemed excited by the challenge despite the danger. Chief Petty Officer Steve Williams checked and rechecked his equipment, knowing that one mistake could kill them all. "Listen carefully," Maya said to her team. "We are going to completely rewire the quantum field matrix. This means disconnecting primary power couplings while the core is still active. One spark in the wrong place and we become atoms floating in space." Dr. Aaron Cole appeared at Maya's shoulder, carrying a portable computer loaded with his calculations. His face was pale but determined as he began explaining the theoretical framework behind their desperate plan. "The alien artifact changed the quantum signature of our core," Aaron explained. "Instead of creating a single point of space-time distortion for faster-than-light travel, we can create multiple distortion points that will echo our ship's presence across local space." Maya nodded, though she understood only half of what Aaron was saying. She was an engineer, not a scientist, but she knew machinery better than anyone else on the ship. She could make his theories work, even if she did not completely understand them. The first step was shutting down life support on the lower decks. Maya watched the environmental displays as oxygen stopped flowing to decks 7 through 12. The crew on those decks had already moved to other areas of the ship, crowding into spaces barely large enough to hold them. Next came the power rerouting. Maya's fingers flew over the control panels as she diverted energy from the artificial gravity generators, the recreational facilities, and every non-essential system on the ship. Slowly, more and more power flowed toward the quantum core, making it glow brighter with each passing minute. "Power levels at 130% of normal," Bill reported, sweat dripping from his forehead despite the cool temperature in engineering. "We need more," Maya said. "Aaron, how much power do we need for stable temporal echoes?" Aaron checked his calculations again. "At least 160% of normal core output. Ideally 180% for maximum effect." Maya bit her lip. They were already pushing the quantum core beyond its design limits. Going to 180% might cause an explosion before they even reached the battle. But without enough power, the temporal echoes would be too weak to fool enemy sensors. "Nancy, shut down the backup life support systems," Maya ordered. "Steve, disconnect the emergency power reserves and route everything to the core." Nancy hesitated. "Maya, if something goes wrong with the primary life support, we will have no backup systems. If this plan fails, backup life support will not matter," Maya replied grimly. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Lieutenant Peter Hayes bent over his communications console, intercepting enemy transmissions from the approaching Zephyrian fleet. His equipment was some of the most advanced in human space, capable of breaking most alien encryption codes given enough time. "Captain, I am getting fragments of enemy communications, Peter reported to Jake Morrison. They are using a rotating encryption pattern, but I can make out some of their battle plans. Jake moved to stand behind Peter's chair. What are they saying? Peter's fingers moved across his controls, fine-tuning the signal reception. Alien voices filled the bridge speakers, speaking in the harsh, clicking language of the Zephyrian Empire. The universal translator worked slowly, converting the alien words into human speech. They expect easy victory, Peter translated. Admiral Crix is commanding the fleet from a ship called the Dominator. He has ordered his ships to maintain perfect formation until they reach Earth orbit, then spread out to surround the planet. Jake studied the tactical display showing the enemy fleet's approach. The Zephyrians were indeed flying in perfect formation, their ships arranged in precise geometric patterns that spoke of absolute confidence. They had done this many times before, conquering world after world with overwhelming force. They are not expecting any resistance, Peter continued. Their scouts reported that all human fleets are fighting elsewhere. They think Earth is defenseless. This was good news for Jake's plan. If the enemy was not expecting a fight, they would be unprepared for the surprise that was coming. But first, Maya and her team had to successfully modify the quantum core without destroying the ship. Down in engineering, the modifications continued. Maya personally crawled into the core housing, working with delicate instruments while surrounded by enough energy to power a small city. One wrong move would kill her instantly, but she worked with steady hands and complete focus. Field matrix realignment at 50%. Nancy called out from her control station. Temporal echo generators coming online, Steve reported. Aaron watched his computer screen, monitoring the quantum signatures that were the key to their entire plan. The readings were unlike anything he had ever seen before. The alien energy from the artifact was definitely changing how their technology worked, but he still was not sure exactly what would happen when they activated the system. Maya, we need to install the echo amplifiers directly into the core housing, Aaron said. The quantum field has to be perfectly balanced or the echoes will be unstable. Maya nodded and reached for the amplifier components. They were small devices no bigger than her fist, but they contained technology that pushed the boundaries of human science. Installing them required her to work within inches of the quantum core's energy field, where the slightest mistake would be fatal. Hours passed as the modification work continued. The crew worked without breaks, knowing that time was running out. Above them, the enemy fleet drew steadily closer to Earth, unaware that one human ship was preparing to challenge their entire armada. Core modifications at 90% completion, Maya finally announced, her voice hoarse from hours of intense work. Jake's voice came over the intercom. How much longer? 1 hour, Maya replied. Maybe less if everything goes perfectly. But as she spoke, alarms began sounding throughout the engineering section. The quantum core was showing signs of instability, fluctuating between normal and dangerous energy levels. We have a problem, Aaron announced, staring at his readings in shock. The quantum core shuddered and sparked as Maya Rodriguez worked frantically to stabilize the energy fluctuations. Warning lights flashed red throughout the engineering section while alarms screamed their electronic warnings. The modifications were almost complete, but the core was fighting against the changes like a wild animal trying to break free from its cage. Power levels jumping between 100 and 200%. Engineer Bill Carter shouted over the noise. The containment field is losing stability. Maya's hands moved quickly over the control panels, adjusting field harmonics and power distribution with the skill of someone who had spent her entire career working with dangerous technology. Sweat poured down her face as she fought to keep the quantum core from exploding and taking the entire ship with it. Aaron, what is happening? Maya called to the scientist. Dr. Aaron Cole stared at his computer screen, watching quantum readings that defied everything he thought he knew about physics. The alien energy signature is fighting our modifications. It wants to return to its original state. Can we override it? Maya asked. I think so, but we need to complete the installation of the echo amplifiers before the core destabilizes completely, Aaron replied. We have maybe 10 minutes. Maya looked at the quantum core housing where the final amplifier needed to be installed. The energy field around the core was now visibly crackling with dangerous power. Anyone who went inside that housing would be walking into what was essentially a controlled lightning storm. I'll do it, Engineer Nancy Phillips said, stepping forward with the final amplifier in her hands. No, Maya said firmly. This is my responsibility. Maya took the amplifier from Nancy and checked her protective gear one more time. The energy suit would protect her from most radiation and electrical discharge. But if the quantum field collapsed while she was inside the housing, even the best protection would not save her. She stepped into the core housing, feeling the air itself crackling with power around her. The quantum core towered above her, a column of pure energy contained within magnetic fields that hummed with barely controlled force. The installation point for the final amplifier was at the base of the core, requiring her to work directly beneath the most dangerous part of the entire system. Maya knelt down and began connecting the amplifier to the quantum matrix. Her hands shook slightly as she worked, not from fear but from the electrical charge in the air around her. Every few seconds, small bolts of energy would arc across the housing, lighting up the space like miniature lightning strikes. Amplifier connection at 50%, Maya reported through her communicator. On the bridge, Captain Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as the enemy fleet continued its approach toward Earth. The Zephyrian ships had reached the outer edge of the solar system and were beginning to spread into attack formation. Time was running out faster than he had hoped. Status report from engineering, Jake ordered. Core modifications at 95% completion, came Maya's strained voice over the intercom. But we're having stability problems. Commander Lisa Barnes looked up from her tactical station with worry in her eyes. Captain, if the quantum core explodes while we are this close to Earth, the blast could damage the planet's magnetic field. Jake nodded grimly. They were taking a risk not just with their own lives, but potentially with the entire planet they were trying to protect. But the alternative was certain destruction when the Zephyrian fleet arrived. Lieutenant Peter Hayes suddenly straightened at his communications console. Captain, I am intercepting new enemy transmissions. They have detected our ship. Jake's blood went cold. If the enemy knew about the Defiance, they might change their approach or send scouts to investigate. Their plan depended on surprising the Zephyrian fleet when it least expected resistance. What are they saying? Jake asked. Peter listened carefully to the alien voices coming through his equipment. Admiral Crix is asking about a single human ship near Jupiter. His scouts report that it appears to be damaged and drifting. Jake almost smiled. The power fluctuations from their quantum core modifications were making the Defiance appear disabled to enemy sensors. The Zephyrians thought they had found a crippled ship, not a threat. Admiral Crix has ordered his scouts to ignore us, Peter continued. He says one damaged ship is not worth their attention when they have an entire planet to conquer. This was exactly what Jake had hoped for. The enemy's overconfidence was working in humanity's favor. They were so certain of victory that they could not imagine one human ship posing any real threat to their massive fleet. Back in engineering, Maya completed the final connections on the Echo amplifier. The device clicked into place with a satisfying sound, and immediately the quantum core's energy fluctuations began to stabilize. The dangerous crackling in the air started to fade as the modified systems found their new equilibrium. Final amplifier installed and functioning, Maya announced as she stepped out of the core housing. All Echo generators are online and ready. Aaron checked his calculations one more time, then nodded to Maya. We are ready to activate the temporal ecosystem. But remember, once we start this, we will have 20 minutes before the core overloads. Maya moved to the main engineering console and placed her hand on the activation control. Engineering to bridge. Quantum core modifications complete. Ready to generate temporal echoes on your command. Jake's voice came back immediately. Understood. Move the ship into attack position. The USS Defiance changed course, moving away from its hiding place near Jupiter's moons and toward the approaching enemy fleet. On the bridge, Lisa Barnes coordinated their approach, using the planet's gravity well to mask their movement for as long as possible. Enemy fleet will reach Earth orbit in 37 minutes, Lisa reported. Recommend we begin our attack in 15 minutes to achieve maximum surprise. Jake nodded. All stations prepare for combat. This is what we trained for. But even as he spoke, Jake knew that no amount of training could prepare them for what they were about to attempt. They were going to make one ship look like an entire fleet, using technology that had never been tested in combat. If the temporal echoes failed to convince enemy sensors, the Defiance would be destroyed within minutes. Dr. Aaron Cole arrived on the bridge, carrying his portable computer and looking both excited and terrified. Captain, I need to monitor the ecosystem from here during the battle. The quantum signatures are still unpredictable. Take the science station, Jake ordered. Aaron sat down at the science console and began running final checks on the temporal ecosystem. Everything looked ready, but he could not shake the feeling that they were missing something important about how the alien energy would interact with their technology. Captain, enemy scouts are moving past Jupiter, Lisa announced. We are about to lose our cover. Jake took a deep breath and looked around the bridge at his crew. These people were about to risk everything on a plan that might not work. But they were ready to do it anyway, because that was what humans did when faced with impossible odds. Activate the temporal ecosystem, Jake commanded. Let's see what one human ship can really do. The moment Dr. Aaron Cole activated the temporal ecosystem, reality seemed to bend around the USS Defiance. The air on the bridge shimmered like heat waves rising from hot pavement, and every crew member felt a strange tingling sensation as space-time itself was twisted into impossible shapes around their ship. On the main display screen, Captain Jake Morrison watched in amazement as ghostly images of the Defiance began appearing around their real ship. First one echo, then another, then dozens more until what looked like an entire fleet surrounded them. Each temporal duplicate was a perfect copy of their ship, complete with energy signatures and movement patterns that would appear completely real to enemy sensors. Echo generation successful, Aaron reported from the science station, his voice filled with wonder at what his theories had accomplished. I am reading 32 stable temporal duplicates. Enemy sensors should detect what appears to be a full battle fleet. Commander Lisa Barnes stared at her tactical display in disbelief. Her instruments showed the Phantom fleet as clearly as if 32 real ships had suddenly materialized around them. The temporal echoes moved in perfect formation, each one responding to the Defiance's movements like synchronized dancers. This is incredible, Lisa whispered. It looks completely real. Jake nodded, but he forced himself to focus on the mission ahead. The temporal echoes were working perfectly, but they only had 20 minutes before the quantum core overloaded. 20 minutes to defeat an enemy fleet that had been conquering worlds for over a century. Set course for the enemy formation, Jake ordered. Take us straight into the heart of their fleet. The Phantom fleet of temporal echoes followed the real Defiance as it accelerated toward the Zephyrian Armada. To any observer, it would appear that 33 human warships were charging fearlessly toward 300 enemy vessels, adopting an aggressive attack formation that spoke of absolute confidence. Admiral Crix stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Dominator, when his sensor operator called out an alarm. The Zephyrian admiral was a veteran of 50 conquests, a cold and calculating commander who had never been defeated in battle. But what his sensors were showing him made no sense. Admiral, I am detecting multiple human vessels approaching our position, the sensor operator reported, his voice shaking with confusion. They appear to have emerged from behind Jupiter. Admiral Crix moved to the sensor station and studied the readings himself. His tactical computer clearly showed 33 human ships moving in perfect attack formation. But how is this possible? His intelligence reports had confirmed that all human fleets were scattered across the galaxy, fighting desperate battles at distant star systems. How did they hide an entire fleet from our scouts? Admiral Crix demanded. Unknown, sir, the sensor operator replied. They must have been using some kind of stealth technology we have never encountered before. Admiral Crix felt the first stirring of unease in his chest. The humans were supposed to be a primitive species, barely capable of faster-than-light travel. Yet here was evidence of advanced stealth technology and tactical coordination that rivaled the best in the Zephyrian military. Order all ships to defensive formation, Admiral Crix commanded. Prepare for combat. But even as he gave the order, Admiral Crix noticed something strange about the human attack pattern. The 33 ships were moving in perfect synchronization, as if controlled by a single mind. No fleet could achieve such precise coordination without years of training and advanced computer systems. Aboard the Defiance, Lisa Barnes coordinated the Phantom fleet's assault using the ship's artificial intelligence. The computer calculated the movement patterns for all 32 temporal echoes, making them appear to be individual ships with their own commanders and attack strategies. Beginning attack run, Lisa announced, all weapons charging. The Defiance opened fire with its main particle beam cannons, sending brilliant streams of energy toward the enemy formation. Instantly, the temporal echoes amplified the effect, making it appear as if 33 ships were firing simultaneously. The combined barrage looked devastating, even though only one ship was actually shooting. The first Zephyrian ships to be hit exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their hulls unable to withstand what appeared to be concentrated fire from multiple human vessels. Admiral Crix watched in shock as his supposedly superior ships were destroyed by enemies that should not have been able to penetrate Zephyrian shields. Impossible, Admiral Crix muttered. Our intelligence report said human weapons were inferior to ours, but the evidence was right in front of him. Human ships were tearing through his formation with weapons that seemed far more advanced than anything in Zephyrian databases. Several of his commanders were already calling for him to order a retreat. Sir, the human ships are using some kind of coordinated targeting system, one of his tactical officers reported. They are hitting our weak points with perfect accuracy. Admiral Crix gritted his teeth. He had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire species. He would not be defeated by primitive humans no matter what advanced technology they had somehow acquired. All ships concentrate fire on the lead human vessel, Admiral Crix ordered. Destroy their flagship and the rest will scatter. 3 dozen Zephyrian ships turned their weapons toward what appeared to be the command ship of the human fleet. Energy beams and missile salvos streaked through space, converging on the temporal echo that looked like the most important target. But their weapons passed harmlessly through the phantom ship, striking empty space where sensors insisted a real vessel should be. The temporal echo flickered and wavered but did not disappear, continuing its attack run as if nothing had happened. Our weapons are having no effect, the tactical officer reported in confusion. It is as if we are shooting at ghosts. Jake Morrison smiled grimly as he watched enemy fire pass through his temporal echoes without causing any damage. The phantom ships were not really there, so physical weapons could not harm them. Only sensors and computer systems were fooled by the quantum distortions. Target their command ship, Jake ordered. Let's give Admiral Crix something to really worry about. The Defiance and its phantom fleet concentrated their apparent firepower on the massive Zephyrian flagship. To Admiral Crix, it looked like 33 human ships had singled out his vessel for destruction, pouring devastating energy into his shields with surgical precision. The Dominator's shields flickered and sparked under the assault. Admiral Crix felt his ship shudder as hull plating began to buckle under what seemed like impossible firepower. How could human weapons be so much more powerful than his intelligence reports had indicated? Shield strength down to 60%, his engineering officer reported. At this rate, we will lose containment in 5 minutes. Admiral Crix stared at the tactical display, watching his fleet fall apart around him. Ships that had conquered worlds were being destroyed by what appeared to be a perfectly coordinated human assault. Some of his captains were already breaking formation, trying to escape what looked like certain death. All ships, emergency retreat, Admiral Crix finally ordered, his pride crumbling under the weight of impossible defeat. Fall back to the edge of the system. But Jake Morrison was not finished yet. He had less than 10 minutes before the quantum core overloaded, and he intended to use every second to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison watched the enemy fleet begin to scatter as Admiral Crix's retreat order spread through the Zephyrian formation. Ships that had been moving in perfect military precision just minutes before were now breaking ranks and fleeing toward the edge of the solar system. But Jake was not ready to let them escape so easily. Pursue the flagship, Jake ordered. We need to finish this before our time runs out. The USS Defiance and its phantom fleet of temporal echoes accelerated after the massive Zephyrian dreadnought Dominator. To Admiral Crix and his crew, it appeared that 33 human warships were chasing them with deadly intent, their weapons still firing devastating salvos that somehow penetrated shields designed to withstand planet-killing weapons. Dr. Aaron Cole monitored the quantum core readings from his science station, sweat beading on his forehead as he watched the energy levels climb steadily toward critical overload. Captain, we have 7 minutes before core collapse. Maybe 8 if we reduce power to the temporal echoes. Maintain full power, Jake replied without hesitation. We need to make sure this fleet never comes back. On the main display, Jake could see the Dominator's shields failing under the concentrated fire from the Phantom fleet. The massive ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built, bristling with weapons that could destroy cities. But it was helpless against an enemy that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Commander Lisa Barnes coordinated the final assault with the precision of a master tactician. Her fingers flew over the tactical controls as she directed the temporal echoes to surround the enemy flagship from all sides. To Admiral Crix, it looked like his ship was being attacked by ghosts that could appear and disappear at will. "Target their main reactor," Lisa announced. "Let's end this." The Defiance fired its most powerful weapons directly at the Dominator's engine section. The temporal echoes amplified the attack, making it appear as if 33 ships were focusing all their firepower on a single critical point. The combined assault was more than any ship could withstand. Admiral Crix felt his flagship shudder and shake as explosions rippled through the engineering sections. Warning lights flashed red across his command bridge, while his crew scrambled to contain the damage. But it was too late. The impossible human attack had broken through every defense the Zephyrian Empire could devise. "Reactor containment failing," his chief engineer reported, terror clear in his voice. "We have 2 minutes before total core breach." Admiral Crix stared at the tactical display showing the human fleet that had destroyed his armada. In 40 years of military service, he had never seen anything like it. Ships that fought like demons, weapons that defied physics, and tactical coordination that seemed almost supernatural. How did the humans become so powerful? Admiral Crix whispered to himself. Lieutenant Peter Hayes intercepted the Admiral's final transmission as the Dominator's communications system failed. The alien commander was sending a desperate message to his surviving ships, warning them about the impossible human fleet that had appeared from nowhere. "Sir, Admiral Crix is telling his remaining ships to flee the system immediately," Peter reported. "He says the humans have weapons and technology far beyond anything in Zephyrian intelligence files." Jake nodded grimly. This was exactly the message he wanted to send. The Zephyrian Empire needed to learn that humanity was not helpless prey to be conquered at will. They were something far more dangerous. The Dominator exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the entire solar system. The massive dreadnought, flagship of the most feared fleet in the galaxy, broke apart in a chain reaction of secondary explosions that could be seen from Earth itself. Admiral Crix and his crew of 5,000 warriors died in an instant, victims of their own overconfidence. The remaining Zephyrian ships fled toward the edge of the system in complete panic. Captains who had conquered dozens of worlds were running from what they believed to be the most advanced fleet they had ever encountered. Some ships were so desperate to escape that they collided with each other in their haste to reach hyperspace. "Enemy fleet in full retreat," Lisa reported, her voice filled with amazement at what they had accomplished. "Estimated time to system exit 40 minutes. But even as she spoke, warning alarms began sounding throughout the Defiance. The quantum core was reaching the end of its modified operational limits and the temporal echoes were becoming unstable. "Core overload in 3 minutes, Aaron announced, his voice tight with stress. "I need to shut down the ecosystem now or we will lose the ship." Jake looked one more time at the fleeing enemy vessels on his display screen. They had done it. One human ship had defeated an entire armada through ingenuity, courage, and sheer determination. The impossible had become reality. "Shut it down," Jake ordered. Aaron's fingers moved quickly over his controls, gradually reducing power to the temporal echo generators. One by one, the phantom ships began to fade away like ghosts returning to whatever dimension they had come from. The great fleet that had terrified the Zephyrian Empire disappeared, leaving only the USS Defiance hanging alone in space. Maya Rodriguez's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Quantum core stabilizing. All systems returning to normal operational parameters." "We did it, Captain. We actually did it." Jake sat back in his command chair, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished settling on his shoulders. They had saved Earth, but more than that, they had changed humanity's place in the galaxy forever. "Peter, send a message to Earth Defense Command," Jake ordered. "Tell them the enemy fleet has been defeated and is retreating from the system." Peter's fingers flew over his communications console. "Message sent, sir. And Captain, I am receiving responses from every human colony within 50 light years. Word of our victory is spreading faster than light itself." Dr. Aaron Cole looked up from his science station, his face showing exhaustion and wonder in equal measure. "Captain, the implications of what we have accomplished go far beyond this single battle. We have proven that human technology can be adapted in ways that other species never imagined. The quantum ecosystem could revolutionize space combat." Jake nodded. "Begin working on improvements to the system. Make it safer and more reliable. But first get some rest. You have all earned it. As the Defiance began its journey back toward Earth, Jake thought about the message this victory would send across the galaxy. Other species that had been conquered by the Zephyrian Empire would learn that the seemingly unstoppable Armada had been defeated by a single human ship. Hope would spread to enslaved worlds, while fear would grow in the hearts of those who thought humans were easy prey. The USS Defiance had become more than just a ship. It had become a legend, proof that sometimes one determined crew with an impossible plan could change the fate of entire civilizations. In the years to come, alien species would whisper stories about the phantom fleet that appeared from nowhere to save humanity. And somewhere in the depths of space, Admiral Crix's final message was being received by the Zephyrian High Command, warning them that the humans were not what they seemed to be. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again,